How's it going? So this video is actually about the section 3 of the GRE exam. I'm attaching the link to this video. You can just pull it up in the bio. Before you guys continue with the video, make sure you guys finish that test, and then any questions you guys have, I answer every single question. So I hope this helps. Let's get it. Okay, so let's start with number 1. So the beginning of this test, all the questions go in the format of you having to pick whether quantity A or quantity B is bigger, right? So the first question, we have two triangles. We'll say this side is A and this side is B. So we have two triangles which are right triangles. You can tell that by the little box that they have in the left corner right here. And we have 4, 8, x, 4, 4, y. So the main formula, if you don't remember, for any right triangle is the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. C squared is always going to be the hypotenuse, which is the longest side. So let's plug in the values here and then we'll get the answer. So 4 squared, which is 16, plus x squared equals 64. This is for A. And for B, we have 16, which is 4 squared, plus 16 again, which is another 4 squared, equals y squared. So let's break this one down. This, if we move the 16 to this side, we get x squared equals 48. X equals square root of 48. And for B, we have 32 equals y squared. Y equals square root of 32. Clearly, this one is going to be bigger. So number 1 is A. So now let's move on to number 2. So for this one, we're given x minus 2y times x plus 2y equals to 4. And they're asking us for x squared minus 4y squared. So the main formula you want to know for this one is this. A minus b times a plus b will always be a squared minus b squared. Right? So when you see that they say x minus 2y times x plus 2y, when you see that down below it says x squared minus 4y squared, if you think about it, that is just if you allow a to equal x and 2y to equal b. Sorry, I'll just write b on the other side too. B equals 2y. Then you can plug whatever that's given in x minus 2y times x plus 2y the same way we do up here, where x is a and 2y is b. So this means that when you write it in this format, this is the answer, right? So a squared minus b squared is actually just going to be 4, because that's what x minus 2y and x plus 2y is. They're both the same. So let's do that. So we put a as x and b as 2y squared. So when we plug it in over here, we're going to get x squared minus 2y squared. When you multiply this out, you have x squared minus 4y squared. So we know that this equals 4, okay? And the other value is 8. So clearly, which one's bigger? 8. So the answer for this one is going to be B. Alright, let's do number 3 now. So here, we're going to be using a proportion. So the main thing for a proportion is you always want to write the units that you're going to keep on top and the units you're going to keep on bottom. That way you can just say consistent and you make sure you don't make any mistakes. So for this one, let's say we're going to have the number of cups of sugar on top, and on the bottom we're going to have the number of cookies. Okay, so now let's use the first sentence that they have. So we know that there's a proportion of 1/2 cups of sugar for every 2 dozen, and a dozen cookies are 12 cookies, so 24 cookies equals, what we're given is the same amount of sugar required for the same recipe to make 30 cookies. So let's do that. 30. We're trying to figure out how many cups, so x. Now we just do simple algebra. We get 30 times 3 over 2 over 24, which is just 90 divided by 2, which is 45. 45 over 24. 24 equals x. Another value that we have, quantity B, is 2 cups. So 2 cups, if we take it to be out of 24, is going to be 48 out of 24, correct? And because this is just 2, and this value is clearly larger than 45 over 24. Therefore, the answer for number 3 is going to be B. Okay, so now let's work on number 4. So in this question, it says that there is a square region that measures 10 by 10. So let's draw that out. Number 4. Okay. So here's a trick for this question, right? Whenever you see, so we were trying to pick whether quantity A or quantity B is bigger. So here it's saying that there are 3 substations that are located inside of this square from any particular distance, and we have to take the sum of that distance, right? When it comes to these type of questions, we need to realize that this sum is going to be in a range. So for example, let's say this is going to be the smallest range, and this is going to be the largest, right? So if the power station is right here, if we pick 3 points that are right here, then the sum distance is going to be tiny, so that's going to be over here. But if we pick 3 points all the way in the opposite end, then that's going to be largest, right? So when we need to pick which quantity is greater, we need to make sure that it can't have some quantities here and some quantities here, because what that means is the answer will then be D. The relationship cannot be determined from the information given, and that's exactly what happens in this case. So if you pick 3 points here, the sum will be maybe like, you know, if we say each one is 1 mile, then the sum would be like 3 miles. But over here, the sum would be closer to, you know, a little more than 10 miles, right? Because if this is 10, this diagonal is going to be more than 10. So then that would be closer to like 30 or a little more than that, right? It would be a little more than 30. So like x, you know, x would be greater than 30. Therefore, since we have values that are both smaller than 30 as well as greater than 30, the answer for this question will be D. Okay, now let's move on to number 5. So over here, we're given, this is very similar to number 4 again. So x is in the middle of 6 and 7, and y is equal to 8. So we need to figure out whether 0.85 is bigger or whether x over y is bigger, right? So again, let's take a value on the smallest end of x, which would be 6. Technically, since it's greater, it would be 6.00000001, but we'll just round that off to 6 for right now. That'd be 6 over 8, which is 0.75. So right now, we know that this is smaller than quantity B. But now let's put 7 over 8. This is 14 over 16, right? And if you put it in a calculator, this is going to be a little bigger than this 0.875, I believe that's what I believe that is. So that's going to be a little bigger than 0.85. Therefore, again, number 5, the answer is going to be D. The relationship cannot be determined. So I messed up on number 6, so I'm going to do it again. This time I hope I get it right. So the main property for this question that you need to know is that we know that this degree right here is 60. Let's call this degree x and degree y. So we want to find the circumference of this circle. And the only information that we're given is that the sum of all these 3 lengths is going to be 6. So we don't really know, necessarily what this is going to be, or this is going to be, or this is going to be, until we figure this out. So we know x plus y is going to be 120 degrees because the sum of all the angles in a triangle is 180. And here's the very important property that we need to know about triangles. So we know that this is the radius and this is also the radius because this is like in a circle, right? And we know that the radiuses of all the radiuses in a circle are going to be the same length. Another property about triangles is that the opposite side of the degree is going to be proportional to the amount, to the degree itself. So since we know that this and this are the exact same length, then we know x and y are also going to be the same. So 120 divided by 2 is just going to be 60. So we know that this is an equilateral triangle, which means that every single side is the same length. So if the total sum is 6, then we know that this, we know the radius is going to be 2. To refresh the circumference of a circle the formula is going to be 2 pi r. So let's plug 2 in there, we get 4 pi. So this is for this is value A, and we know value B is going to be 12. So we know pi is going to be 3.14, and 4 times 3 is 12. So since 3.4 is greater than 3, we're going to know that A is our answer. So great, we're done with number 6. Now let's do 7. So for this question's about standard deviation, okay? And the idea of standard deviation is basically if you have a group of numbers, right? 1, 8, 12, 100,000. This is going to have a very high standard deviation, because standard deviation, if we pull up the definition right now, is a quantity calculated to indicate the extent of deviation for a group as a whole. So for example, once you calculate the mean, if you see a bunch of numbers that are extremely far away from that number, then you know the standard deviation is going to be high. So in this example, it says that the standard deviation is set of integers each between 0 and 10 and between 10 and 20. So again, in this type of question, we have no idea what the numbers could be. We could pick any sort of numbers. So for example, we can have a set of numbers 0, 1, 1, 1, 1 compared to 10, 12, 14, 19, 20, right? In this case, this one is going to have a much smaller standard deviation. But you can do the same thing where you have 0, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and you can have 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, right? So these type of questions, you're going to always have to check, is it possible that I could have, quantity A being greater than quantity B, and at the same time, is it also possible for me to make quantity B bigger than quantity A? So again, number 7 is going to be D. Okay, now let's do number 8. So here we just have simple exponent properties. We have x times x squared to the power of 4. So whenever you multiply exponent and you take it to the power of another exponent, you multiply. So you're going to have x times x to the 8. And when you multiply two exponents, there's like a 1 here, you're going to add. So you have x to the power of 9. And the second one, again, x to the power of 3 to the power of 3 is just going to be x to the power of 9. So these are equal. So there's a first answer, which is C. Great. Let us do number 9 now. Okay, so this is also a tricky one. So this is A, the absolute value of x plus absolute value of negative 2. And we have B, which is going to be the absolute value of x minus 2. Just a refresher, the absolute value is basically how far is a number from 0. So all that does is it gets rid of the negative sign. So the absolute value of negative 5 is just going to be 5. So when we have this one right here, we know that this is just absolute value x plus 2. And this is just going to be x minus 2. And we're given that x can be any integer, right? And actually, we're not even told that x is an integer. We just said that it's not equal to 0. So as soon as you see something like that, and you see absolute value, you need to think, okay, I need to try out both negative numbers as well as positive numbers. So let's try any positive number. Let's try the number 3. So 3 plus 2 is going to be 5. 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. So A is greater in this case. Now, let's try a negative number. So negative 3 plus 2, this is going to be, negative 3 plus 2 is going to be, this is going to become, so negative 3 plus 2, this is going to become 3, so we're going to have 5 again. Over here, if we put negative 3 minus 2, we're going to have minus 5, which is just going to lead us to 5 again. So here, the two are equal. So we realize that in the first case, A is going to be greater than B, but in the second case, A and B are actually going to be equal. Therefore, we have to come to the conclusion that the answer is D. Okay, let's do number 10. So this is a systems of equation question, so let's write the two equations down. 7x plus 3y equals to 12, and the second equation is 3x plus 7y equals to 6. So whenever we see systems of equations, the best way to solve it is try to get rid of one of the equations, right? One of the variables. So to do that, we need to make sure that we have the same coefficients on the top and bottom. So let's get rid of x. So we're going to multiply everything up here by 3 and everything down here by 7, so we can have 21. So we're going to have multiply everything by 3, 21x plus 9y equals to 36, and then multiply everything here by 7, 21x plus 49y equals 42. So since this is a systems of equations, we can just subtract everything on the bottom from whatever's on the top. So 21 minus 21 is 0. 9 minus 49 is negative 40. And 36 minus 42 is negative 6. Now we can just move the negative 40 to this side. We have y equals to 6 over 40, which is just 3 over 20. So there we go. Now we know what y is. Now let's just plug this value into either of these equations. It doesn't matter. So let's put it into the first one. We're going to have 7x plus 3 times 3 over 20 is just 9 over 20 equals 12. We're going to move the 9 over 20 to this side. We have 7x equals to 12 minus 9 over 20. Now, if we actually do this, we have 7x equals to, we have to multiply 12 by 20, which is 240, minus 9 over 20, sorry. This gets us 7x equals to 231 over 20. And now let's multiply both sides by 1 over 7. And we get x equals to 231 over 140. And now if we just divide the top and bottom by 7, we should get our answer. So 231 divided by 7 is 33. And 140 over 7 is 20. Jesus. So now that we have that 33 over 20, now all we have to do is x minus y, which is 33 over 20 minus 3 over 20, which is 30 over 20, which is 3 over 2. So our answer is now B. Okay, so now if we take number 11 into consideration, we have that there is a triangle ABC. We'll just make it a right triangle for right now. And we know that one of the degrees is going to be 25. So A is 25 degrees, and B at the very least is going to be 90 degrees. Since we know that the sum of a triangle is going to be 180, and this comes out to 115, we know that C at the very greatest is going to be 180 minus 115 degrees, which is 65. So the answer for number 11 is any value that is less than 65. So that the final answer will be A, B, C, and D. Let's take number 12 now. So in this question, it says, what is the least integer n such that 1 divided by 2n will be less than 0.001? So 1 over 2n equals 0. So if this was the case, we know that 1 over 1000 will be equal to this value. So for any 2n that's even a little greater than 1000, we know that the value will be less than this, right? As the denominator increases in a fraction, the total value will always decrease. So all we have to do is find the first 2 to the n power that's bigger than 1000. So knowing this fact is always helpful when it comes to knowing your 2 powers. 2 to the power of 10 is 1024. And as 1024 is greater than 1000, we know that 10 is going to be the first integer for n, where the value is going to be less than this. So the answer for number 12 is going to be A. So now for 13, we have a proportion question. So it says that for an upright pole that is 12 feet tall, it casts a 8 feet long shadow. So again, as we mentioned earlier, let's write the units. So the top is going to say the amount feet tall and the bottom is going to be the shadow. So now all we have to do is just keep this proportion consistent. So we're going to have 12 over 8 equals to, we have 10-foot shadow, and we want to find how long that is. So now all we have to do is solve for x. So we have, let's multiply both sides by 10. We have 120 over 8 equals to x, and this x equals to 15. So the answer for 13 is going to be D. Okay, so now looking at number 14, we're given that k is the smallest prime number greater than 21. So if we just look through the numbers, we know that that number will be 23. And we're given that b is the largest prime less than 16. So if we just look down a couple numbers, we'll realize that's 13. If we multiply the two, 23 times 13, 9, 6, 3, 2, 9, 9, 2, 99. So we know that the answer is A. Okay, perfect. Now let's look at number 15. So in this one, we're given that Judy's water bill for the last quarter was $40.50. So we know that that's a total. Well, let's write that down. $40.50 equals to the bill. So it's a fixed charge of $13.50 plus, for every gallon, it's going to be 0.0075x. And all they want us to do is solve for x. So this is just going to require some simple algebra. We have to move the 1350 to this side. That will give us 27 equals 0.0075x. Let's divide both sides by this number. We get 27. I'm going to move the decimal point over 4 places. So I'm going to have 75 over here. I'm going to add 4 zeros over here. Equal x. And the answer is then going to be, let me think about this for a second. The answer will be 36,000. Perfect. So now we have that number. So for number 16, let's look at this one. 16. Okay. So we're given that we're given these 5 numbers, and the median of any group of numbers is going to be the middle number once the numbers are ordered from least to greatest. So if we take R, it's going to be 23, 25, 27, 28, then 30. So the median is going to be 27. And if we take S, we're going to have 15, 17, 19, 20, then 22. And the median is 19. So how much greater is the median of the number in list R is going to be 8 greater. So the value for 16 is going to be A. Simple. Let's do number 17 now. Okay. So for number 17, they want us to find the 2 corporate sectors that increase their support for the arts. So we can see that that will be the financial, which I'll represent by the F, and services, which I'll represent by the S. So they want us to see how many $1 million did they approximately donate in 1991. So all we have to do is for that is we know that these guys donated 26% of the total amount, and these guys donated 22%. So if we sum up those two, we have 48%, and all we have to do is find out what 48% of the 520 is. So to do that, we just do simple multiplication. 520 multiplied by 0.48 because it's a percent. So this is just going to be 0, 16, 41, 0, 8, 20. And this will give us 0, 6, 9, 4, 2. Which when approximated to the nearest 10 million, we're going to have 250 million. So that is our answer, 250 million. Okay, now let's do the final one right now, number 18. So So for this question, they're saying how many of the 6 corporate sectors listed each contributed more than 60 million in both 1988 and 1991. So to do that, since everything is given in percents, we need to figure out what percent is 60 million in 1988. And so continuing, 60 out of this 520 will be 11.5%. So all we need to check for is the number of industries where in this year, which is 1988, the number is higher than 9.5%, and in 1991 the number is higher than 11.5%. And if we look at that, the answer will be 3. There are 3 industries where that is true. Okay, now let's move on to number 19. Okay, so now if we look at number 19, it says, which sector decreases support the greatest from 1988 to 1999? So if we just look at the 2 that went significantly down, it'd be manufacturing and retail, which decreased its percents by 11%. So since both of them are 11 now, you have to pick between the 2, right? So the main thing to note here is that in 1988, there is almost 110 more million dollars that were donated, right? So since manufacturing had 31% compared to retail's 19% in 1988, the amount of money that was donated by manufacturing is significantly larger than what was done by retail. So even though the 11% decrease is the same for manufacturing and retail, the money value will be significantly higher for manufacturing just because the percents are significantly larger. So the answer is manufacturing. Now if you look at number 20, of the retails, 1/4 went to symphony orchestra and 1/2 went to public television. So if we look at retail, we know retail in 1991 donated 8%. So if we say 1/4 went to symphony and 1/2 went to public television, we know the remaining would be 1/4 plus 1/2, which is 3/4. So the remaining would be 1/4. 1/4 of 8% is 2%. If you just imagine breaking up the 8% into 4 parts, each part would be 2%. So now all we have to do is figure out what 2% of the 520 million from 1999 is. So all we have to do is 520 times, since it is a percent, 0.02. Let me solve for this, 0, 4, and then 10. And now we just throw on the 2 over. Boom. So the answer is C, $10.4 million. Okay, so now let's look at 21. So this question is saying that there are these 2 music distributors, L and M, and in total they sell 9,300. That's how many titles they distributed. So we know that L is 7,100 and M is 5,200. So if we add these 2, the total would come out to 12,300. And clearly this value is bigger than this value. So we know that there must be at least, there are titles dying halfway through. But what is it saying that? So once we subtract the 3,000 for the amount that L and M sell, we come up with this total number. So now we know that if we add all 3 of these, we end up with 9,300. So since M is actually only selling 5,200 and we know 3,000 of them are sold together, we know that the answer will be B, that more than half the titles distributed by M are also distributed by L. Perfect. So now let's do number 22. So in this question it says C and D are positive integers and M is the greatest common factor of C and D. Then M must be the greatest common factor of C in which of the following integers. So this one's actually quite intuitive. So M is the greatest common factor, right? What that means is for any integer C, M times some other value will equal C, right? So for example, if C is 8, we know that the greatest common factor of 8 and whatever C, like 16 is 8, right? So we know that if we allow M to be 8, then that would be 8 times 1, and we know that that would be 8 times 2. So C is M times Y, and D will also be m times x, right? So the only different values are y and x. So when we have, let's look at A for example, let's just go down the list. A is going to be C plus D. So if we take these definitions, then that's just my plus mx, right? This is what C plus D is, just by taking this. Then you can rearrange these to be m times y plus x, which shows that no matter what the values of y and x are, m will again be a common factor. So this is a check. So before, I don't even need to go on to the other ones before I know that this is the answer. So for 22, we have that A is the answer. Okay, so for number 23, so we have that there are 11 numbers and the average of all 11 is going to be 14. So just a quick refresher, when we calculate the mean of a set of numbers, right, we're going to take x1 plus x2 plus x3 all the way to xn and divide it by n, right? And then you have this value, right? Let's call it v. If we just multiply both sides by n, we get that v times n is the sum of all these numbers. So in the same way over here, they're talking about how the average of these 11 numbers is 14. So the sum of all those numbers is just going to be 11 times 14, which is 154. So we know that if we add up all those 11 numbers, the sum is going to be 154. The second sentence says the average of 9 of those numbers is 9. So what is the sum of those? It's going to be 81, right? So 9 times 9 is 81. So now if we subtract these two, we get 3, 15, 7. So we know that the remaining two numbers are going to have an average of 73. So if we just do 73 divided by 2, we get 36.5, which is the answer. Okay, awesome. So now, final two questions. Let's do number 24. So for this one, we know that there are 400 females and 300 males. So we know that out of these 450, 1/2 of them are going to be less than 30 years old. So that is 225. And out of these 300, we know that 1/4 of them are less than 30 years old. So that's 75. So if we add these two values up, we know that out of the total 750 people, we know that 300 of them are going to be less than 30 years old. So now we just take the fraction 300 over 750. You divide top and bottom by 150. We have 2 over 5. So that's our final answer, D. Okay, so our final question is number 25. So here they gave us the equation of a line, 3x minus 2y equals to 8. So they're asking us for slope. So whenever they ask us any questions about slopes, your first instinct should be to convert the equation into the slope-intercept formula, right? Just a quick reminder, that formula is y equals to mx plus b, where m is going to be the slope and b is going to be the y-intercept. So let's convert this formula into this one over here. So we're going to move the 3x to the other side, minus 2y equals to negative 3x plus 8, and then just divide everything by negative 2. So then we get y equals to 3 over 2x minus 4, and now we have this in this formula where m is a slope, so now we know 3 over 2 is a slope. So the answer is going to be D. Perfect. So I hope that helped. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you.